information that you guys put out there is definitely a big deal.
Yeah, and I know you went from being an electrician to tech sales. And I think it's interesting to dive a layer deeper into that because with all the AI and data center stuff, people are saying become an electrician, become a
Yeah.
plumber. It's AI proof. It's so good. But what was your reality being in a service based electrician, and why did you decide you needed a change in careers?
Well, the biggest thing was, for one, you're at the mercy of the elements. I was doing it in Wisconsin too, so it's just like, you're at the mercy of the elements, extreme hot, extreme cold, and for some people, it is um, an area of strength for them. It's something that they like doing and they've always enjoyed doing, and that's their lane and that's what they're supposed to be doing. But I never had that experience there. I always felt like that. I wanted to be able to use my communication skills to be able to, provide a life for myself and all the perks and that come along with that. Um, Another big thing too is the ceiling. When you're kind of trading your time for money, and there's only so much time in a day. I wanted to do something that gave me the ability to be able to, basically blow the ceiling off of any earning potential that I had. And tech sales ended up being the spot for me to be able to do that. So.
Take us back. Was there a specific moment or moments where you decided you had to make a change?
There was a call. There was about a year, so I would say um, there was a full year where nothing seemed like it was getting better in terms of what I was doing in the apprenticeship. Um, it was just everything was hard. The work was hard. The school work was hard because you do have to go to school while you're in, you know, while you're working as well. So the school work was hard. The job was hard. Like the elements were hard. The money was hard. Everything was just hard. And not saying that that would be everybody's experience, but I'm a big believer that when you are on purpose and when you're on a frequency that's aligned with where you are, you don't have that much resistance in your daily life. And so I actually started reading books probably back in like 2019, and I started reading like a lot of the books that are out there for a lot of people who are in the entrepreneurial self development world. I read like Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read um, uh, Think and Grow Rich. I read a bunch of things that kind of changed my mentality and my mindset as far as what was possible in terms of earning potential and in terms of the standard, the daily standard I have for when I'm going to be spending as much as 40 hours a week in a place. You want to be able to um, somewhat enjoy it or at least have it be tolerable. So that year of just everything being difficult and simultaneously me kind of delving into different books and different podcasts and things like that is what turned me towards sales in general. And then there was another leap after I got into sales that led me toward tech sales and course careers.
When you decided you were done with the trades and you wanted to make your jump into tech sales, experiencing friction that year, how did you actually manage going from the current work you were doing to then getting into tech sales? What did that process look like?
Um, I had to jump. I had to do it. So what I did was I ended up kind of leveraging um, two worlds. So I had technical experience, but I also had technical experience being, working in the trades. But I had some technical hands-on experience in telecom, which also has a sales, division, obviously. So I basically leveraged my previous experience with the telecom company that I was working for to be able to go back and get into sales. And so my product knowledge and my technical knowledge basically was able to kind of pitch that and leverage that into working in a B2C sales position. And from the moment that I had gotten back into that company, but in a sales position, I knew that that was the right decision. And with telecom kind of being more of a industry that's kind of, it's seen as peak. It's not going away, but it's seen as peak. I wanted to just build further on my sales skills, because a lot of the selling that I was doing in the telecom company was very specialized, and it's very specific to that um, product. And I wanted to broaden my skills. I wanted to broaden my knowledge, and just sharpen all the different tool sets that come with sales. So I started looking into that, and I think it was just a natural assumption that, like, hey, if there's a way that I can combine technology and sales, since there was, I think at the time, the buzz was starting to really pick up with AI, but it hadn't really hit the market yet, you know, in in mass. And so I was like, man. And so I Googled it, and I was like, tech sales was the first thing that came up. And so I was like, man, I also don't have a college degree, because I decided to go like more so the trade route. And I was a young father, young husband, and so I was a little bit skeptical and kind of insecure about having um, that inadequacy, I guess, in the area of education. And so when I was researching tech sales, Course Careers came up, and that was like one of the first selling points on some of the information that I saw about Course Careers, was like, this is a good way for people who, maybe don't have a degree, to be able to pivot and put yourself in position to be able to, you know, um, have a high earning potential. And for me, the degree is personal. So like even at the company that I'm at now, tuition reimbursement is one of the benefits. So that is still something that I'll be pursuing, down the line.
It sounds like you were doing electrical work in the trades in some sort of telecom company or industry, and then you were able to use the low hanging fruit. So either the current company you were working for, or it sounds like a company in the industry, to get into sales for a telecom company instead of doing the electrical work. What role did Course Careers play in that whole process?
Yeah, so what happened was, before when I was with the telecom company initially, I was in a technical role. I was a field technician, and I actually leveraged that to get into the trades. And so once I was in the trades for a while, I'm like, this is not me, and yeah, and so then I leveraged my further technical skills that I had gotten from the trades, and my past experience with the telecom company, to go back to the telecom company in sales. Once I got into the sales role, um, I started to get on the phones, get used to talking to customers and things like that. And I had success, which was the first time really I had professional success where I was getting rewards. I was actually I went to like what President's Club would be at that company. So I was the top 3%. They sent us to the Bahamas, and that was like my first time like winning anything, in my professional life, and feeling like a winner, and I just wanted to double down on that experience, and really be able to, like, I want more of this, I want to get better at this. I want to delve deeper into it. Again, I started B2C, so I knew that B2B would be the next kind of jump, and that is what inspired me to go look into, different types of sales. So once I started to looking into going to business sales, that's when the whole, click happened, when I said, okay, I want to get into tech sales, because I learned about the AE role. I learned about the BDR role just watching YouTube videos, and I ended up clicking one of the links, and then I started kind of, I wanted to get a certification to kind of give myself a little bit more leverage when I did try to, enter into the field. And so I, looked at a couple of different options. There were some boot camps out there that were really pricey. And the messaging wasn't as clear. But when I landed on tech sales, I felt like it was reasonably priced. It was an official certification, and then just the messaging behind who the demographic that Course Careers was aiming at felt like it was me, and all the different examples on there and everything like that. So I went ahead and signed up right away. It took me a while to get through it, because yeah, it took me a while to get through it because, again, having family life, and I had a lot of stuff going on in my personal life as well, where I was just kind of trying to bring all the pieces back together. I had relocated, I had, going through a divorce, and I had my kids and, everything. But I just, you know, I was just knocking it out piece by piece, you know what I mean? And so eventually, I ended up getting transferred over to a B2B role in the telecom company, which really turned the lights on for the course careers. So it just, because the motion was so similar, and a lot of the cold calling, I started to see some of the tech stack. I started to see like Salesforce and outreach. They didn't utilize it, in depth there, but it reignited the fire in me to be able to. I gotta finish this because I'm like right there. And so the combination of me going over to the B2B side of the telecom company, and then finishing the course um, within, you know, what was it? I would say within 3 to 4 months of me finishing the course, I was hired.
And what's the experience been like now being in more of a B2B sales role compared to what you were doing in the trades?
Oh man, it's night and day. The it reminds me of a quote that energy is not created or destroyed, it's only transferred. You know what I mean? So it was hard in the trades. This is not easy, but it's a fulfilling hard. It's a fulfilling difficult because there's you can see I can see people around me that started where I am today, and that maybe their first couple of months they ran into some roadblocks, and they you have to kind of find your groove. There is the on paper learning, and then there's the actual in the fire learning. And I'm in that space right now where yeah, you know it on paper. I know I'm supposed to make 80 to 100 calls a day. I know that this is my cold call script. I know that this is my cold email script. I know I'm supposed to follow up, but there's a lot in between the lines there. There's a lot of nuances that ultimately get you to a point where you're actually successful in getting the results that you actually want, and are able to have repeatable results, I would say. And kind of that's the phase that I'm in. But then, like I said, everybody that you see that maybe I'm 2 months into the role, they might be a year in and kind of looking at, going to the next level, which is the AE role and everything like that. They say, hey, I know how it feels, don't worry, keep doing A, B, and C. And then you slowly but surely, like it's like I'll look at something and it's so confusing, whether it's something regarding the tech stack, or something feels really hard in cold calling, or something feels really hard in prospecting, and I feel like, man, you're never gonna get it. And then the next time you open your computer, it's like something clicks, and it's just been a recurring process of that since I started. And so just to answer the question, it is, it's a energy, pool. It's there's some difficulty to it, but it's just in a different way. It's not, physically laborious, and I'm not out in the elements and everything like that. But, it has been challenging, and it's brought a lot out of me, even in this short period of time. I feel like I've grown leaps and bounds, even as a person. You know what I mean? Because you have to deal with that amount of rejection and that amount of like failure, and you have to do it over and over and keep showing up over and over again until you finally kind of break through.
And you mentioned being in that year phase where it was just tough friction, and you needed to make a change, and you ended up taking the action and finding a way through it. And now you're on this other side that, yeah,
Right.
still has challenges, but at least there's more upside, and the challenges may be more fulfilling in some way, being able to solve them in the sales world.
Yeah.
What advice would you have to that person that's listening right now that's in that year period in their life, whatever that looks like, where they know what they're doing is not working, and they're destined to do more, but they just for some reason are waiting, and know that they have it in them to do it, but just haven't taken the leap yet, or don't know what to do?
Yeah, and it brings to mind, I'm big into, personal development. One of my favorite speakers is a guy named Myron Golden. He always talks about the law of entropy, which is basically anything left to its own devices tends to move more and more toward this order. So, in short, that basically means like if you aren't aren't intentional about getting better, you're actually by default going to get worse. So there's no such thing as staying the same, so if you're looking at, the situation that you're in and you know what's on the other side of that, because which is complacency, it's more of the same. It's the same grind, the same feeling of being unfulfilled, the same feeling of like not really making much progress or not having, any upward mobility. That. Um, what stops a lot of people is not knowing what's on the other side. But and really, there's no substitute for just going through it and putting one foot in front of the other and actually making the decision to not turn back and to, just go toward the goal, because at least you're going towards something that is showing you that, hey, there are people in this industry, in this field, that, within 18 months have made a complete 180 in terms of, their um, income ability, in terms of, their work-life balance. That's another thing that I've gotten that I didn't mention. It's a grind, but you're hybrid, you're in the office, you have a lot of resources if you get with a good company. There's so many other benefits, and the biggest thing that we have to get over is just that fear of the unknown. And if you can achieve that and get over that, um, the reward potential is really unlimited. And because of some of the things that I've gone through outside of my professional life, where I was in spots where I felt like I couldn't see how it was going to work out, but I just had an inner knowing that it was going to work out. That's what helps me here. And then, like I said, you have, when you get into the field, you'll be surrounded by examples of people who may have, felt that same strain, or they may have felt that same level of uncertainty, and then they graduate to a point where, hey, actually this is simple, and actually, I've actually, figured out, how to make this work, and it's been all worth it.
So true. You can change everything in a year, and
Yeah,
it really is night and day, and it's way better on the other side. So I'm happy to hear about your success and hope you keep crushing it, and really appreciate you being here today and sharing your story, breaking into tech sales.
appreciate it.